Hey there troops, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and before we get this video underway I just want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and I hope you guys are having a good holiday season. But just before we head into that break and the wonderful week or two where things just seemingly slow down, or at least that's what I tend to enjoy about Christmas, things just stop. We have a really cool update coming for Battlefield in January. The January update is something a lot of people are talking about, but more importantly some of the features of this update potentially that are massively going to improve components of the game, and I think it's worth looking at some of these and talking about potential updates that need to happen down the line as well. So the first major update that's coming to Battlefield 5 is that they're changing the way that the vaulting system has worked. So as you previously may have seen in Battlefield, when you jump from a ledge to a windowsill or just a generally quite large gap, your player will actually hang on to the edge of that and then pull themselves up. And at the moment it's been quite inconsistent, especially when you're grabbing onto certain layers of rubble and just in general buildings that have been destroyed in some form or another. It's quite difficult to pull this off with consistency, and I think most people tend to avoid it just because it doesn't act as a consistent form of movement, and because of that it's not really worth having in your locker. And that's being completely overhauled now. It's much more consistent. You will be able to jump onto layers of rubble and pull yourselves up incredibly well. You'll be able to avoid things like the weird issues of rubble not really registering as things that you can pull yourself up on, and it just makes the overall movement system a much more key and consistent area that you can use in Battlefield 5. The next improvement that's coming down the line is something that I'm definitely very excited about, and that is the update to bipods. Bipods in Battlefield 5 have previously been pretty boring, pretty bad and clunky as hell, and it's made the MMG class incredibly difficult to use effectively because 9 times out of 10 it's not when you're bipoded down that's the problem, it's getting your bipod down in the first place, which burns incredibly important time to be effective, and that means you end up getting your head torn off by snipers, you end up not being able to effectively target enemies. You know, sometimes you'll be aiming in a direction, it'll randomly unbipod and you'll end up getting killed because you're trying to shoot incredibly inaccurately, and overall the entire system just needed an overhaul, and that is finally happening. Now in Battlefield 5 when you place a bipod down, there'll be a much significant larger maneuverability to it, and more importantly it'll be easier to latch on. You'll be able to lay down your bipod significantly quicker and significantly easier on most surfaces, but more importantly once it is bipoded you'll be able to rotate it significantly more without the bipod unbipoding in the process of doing so. And I think this is a really important change. You know, MMGs are something in Battlefield that I don't think really most people have been able to use in the way that we wanted to use them, just because they have that huge inconsistency and you never really know whether you're getting what you're supposed to be getting. But having the bipod system be finalized is going to be incredibly beneficial, and also even to guns like the Ruby Rolls, which has recently been introduced, that will allow it to hit even further range targets. I'm excited to see what this change will bring in terms of a meta shift, because I feel lots of people will start using MMGs, and I'm excited to see what that brings to Battlefield 5 in general. The next important fix is coming with Netcode, and you guys probably have seen some of the developers talk about this, but they recently ran some tests, and there's a really great video by Battle Nonsense if you guys don't know about Chris. He does lots of really great stuff across all video games surrounding Netcode. And on Netcode, that is something that needs improving in Battlefield 5, and it looks like we're going to have the first layer of improvement coming in January, which will hopefully improve the feeling of gunplay in Battlefield 5, and just things in general. I'm still having some instances being shot behind cover, I'm still having instances where I feel the netcode has been incredibly inconsistent, and with a bit of luck that will change soon. So what other changes are needed? And I think there are a few that I'd like to address coming for the next patch. I think these are things that need looking at. I think planes need another look. I think at the moment we've taken them from a very powerful place to a very weak place, and there certainly is a middle ground in between where planes can be effective but not too overpowered. I think at the moment most people are straying away from using them as vehicles, and I personally as well don't really tend to. And I think at the moment that's something that needs a general look at. I think we need our first balancing pass as well in terms of weaponry. I think the assault class is very powerful, the support class, especially with the bipod update, will also be very powerful, and the recon class is incredibly powerful. But the medic class is still incredibly weak. It still doesn't have the firepower that I think most of us are looking for, and I think even at close ranges there are LMGs and assault rifles that are still outdoing SMGs, and it really makes it questionable as to why we should be using them in the first place. The final thing I'd probably recommend is a new balancing system for the tanks. Changing the way Panzerfaust work so there's less deflecting shots, I felt was indirectly nerfing the tanks. You know, tanks feel a lot weaker now because more Panzerfaust shots are hitting. They also feel weaker just in general, because one thing I've really noticed about them is the fact that their shells really don't do any damage to infantry. Their blast radius is incredibly small, and you more or less have to hit an enemy directly with a shell in order to kill them, and I don't think that should be the case. I think tanks need to be dangerous and deadly again as they were in previous iterations, like Battlefield 4, like Battlefield 3, like Bad Company 2, and I think they need a big balancing overhaul to really make them effective war machines in the game, because at the moment, if you drive into an objective in a tank, you're not a threat, you're literally just a sponge waiting to be Panzerfaust to death at any given point. And I think that's a really disappointing way of tanks operating in Battlefield, and I think they definitely need another look in terms of defensive capabilities, but also in terms of the damage output that they can do. So troops, that's about it from me today, the Tactical Brit. You probably won't see any uploads for a little while until after Christmas. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy my holiday like I hope the rest of you guys do. As always folks, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in Battlefield 5.